So I started here with a base coat of latex and a little beige and a little flesh color thrown in, and just a tad of white to lighten it back up. You always want to start with a really light base coat. Then I take out my purple and I start the carotid vein up the neck, wavy, branching out at the top like a tree. This can be as many or as little as you like as far as the branches are concerned. And of course, these techniques that I'm discussing can be applied to just about any paint job. You can lessen or more with the amount of coverage. I tend to go over my veins a second time to give kind of a soft edge in places, and it never matches perfectly. And if you look at the veins in your skin, some places it's a little harder looking than others, and that gives it that illusion, so that some edges are soft and some aren't. I also try to really make it different on the other side, changing up where it branches and so forth. Nature never has any repeats. I've taken a little bit of red and just lightly filled in the eye sockets, and then gone over my carotid vein again. Now I'm taking some burnt umber and doing what I call a chaotic star pattern for my modeling to start with. Take the airbrush, and in a kind of, as if you were making a star, you want to kind of go kind of crazy with it, but keep doing that same pointed pattern. And as the paint gets to the points, it leaves more paint. So in between you get a soft, and at the points you get a little more of a dot. As you layer the different colors, the dots stand out more as if it's human skin. The size of the star pattern is up to you. If you don't like having as much dottage as I do, you can also do almost a figure 8 with it, which gives you just the lines, but I find they don't give as much of an impact. I like to do the back of the head with a little less, make them wider, less tight, and then when I do the front and the face area, I tend to make my modeling a little tighter, so it kind of draws your attention to that centerpiece, to the face. I spend a little extra time going over my veins, making sure that the modeling really does cover the veins well, because in the end you don't want to see the veins strongly, unless that's the purpose of the piece. Some you do. But as a general rule, I just want to see the veins live under the skin slightly. Now I take some green, just a light green color, and I do the next layer of mottling over the entire head. I've now covered the entire head with the green mottling. Next, I go into where I had done the little bit of red in the sockets. I take some more purple, and I start to darken in the sockets and go with the lines that are on the face slightly. I like to cover my sculpted lines with a little bit of darkness. It's going to come out just a tad underneath in the end and emphasize the points of the sculpture. This is why I also start to use the purple to just kind of fill in some of the skull-shaped areas of the head, if it has any details like that. And in the end, go under the jaw slightly to differentiate the head from the neck. It'll be a little dark to start with, but as we move along, it'll kind of fall back in a little bit and become less obvious. I also did a little bit of the neckline just to make it pop. Now I'm taking a little more of the burnt umber and going over the purple in my darker spaces to make them be a little more flesh-like. It takes some of the harshness off and less masky look. I also used the burnt umber to darken up any of the spaces I've done for the skull area and to drag them off into the lighter areas so that I can kind of tie the two together. It looks kind of funny now, but by the end it'll all be seamless and clear. Next, I actually take a little black and go in and just kind of hit a few spots that need some shading where I really want to show through after the fact. It's not much, and I kind of do a modeling pattern around the other parts of the head, but I definitely want some shadows to happen. Next thing I do is hit the whole sculpture with a little bit of blue, just a tad, just to bring some, it adds life underneath. And then I hit the entire thing with a flesh coat and covering it pretty well. You don't want to see the modeling coming through strong. You just want it there as if it's underneath the skin. But I don't use enough flesh to cover everything. Next, I go back to my burnt umber and I give the flesh color just a little bit more of a kick. It brings the fleshiness back out and makes sure it still looks like it has a severe amount of depth. I take that burnt umber and I run it over some of the lines, over the veins, over the areas where I put the deep hollows and so forth, from the lights to the darks, go completely across them, bringing both sides together. Don't forget to keep that star pattern going, but in this case it's kind of more of a squiggly star where I'm pulling long ones, but I do still have my points where I stop. Now we take a really light shade. Sometimes I'll use white. In this case I'm using a really light gray because he's not supposed to be alive. And then I will go in and do my entire modeling over the entire surface, giving it that translucency. It almost looks like a silicone if done properly. It's going to be kind of obvious at first, but once we do the next step, it's going to put life into it. And remember, when modeling, take your time. Don't rush it, especially on this stage with the white. If you get ahead of yourself and you make really big ones, it doesn't look as good. Now I'm going in with some red, just a hint of red over the entire thing, but only in certain places. The cheeks, the chin, the neck, just to give a little touch of life back to it. It takes the white and kicks it down a level so it doesn't look like you painted it white. It looks like the skin is a little rotted underneath, but you've still got flesh to it. Even though something is dead, it still has to look alive, or else it doesn't pay off. Now I spray the entire thing down with clear coat, in this case dull coat, and you can see the paint just comes through and pops now, and it'll remain that way. You can also use a clear 50-50 mixture of latex and polyurethane, water-based polyurethane, otherwise known as perma-wet. And there's the finished piece. As you can see, it really has a nice depth to it and seems to be You can finish this piece out with some eyes and teeth, and it will look amazing.